Okay. Well, we have Dr. Claudio Campagna here from Argentina, who's the Senior Conservation Zoologist and Director of Sea and Sky Project at Wildlife Conservation Society. By the way, Kelly Allward, who runs the Washington office of the Wildlife Conservation Society, is with us here today. You probably remember Kelly from receiving a phone call in your office asking to come and see you. Kelly has been working very close with ICCF at WCS for about 10 years now, and has done a real wonderful job. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Claudio Campagna. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, thank you for coming. Let me spend 1 minute or two to provide you some background about who I am and what I'm doing. I'm a medical doctor. This is what I studied. University of Buenos Aires. I never worked as a medical doctor, but I am one. I wanted to be a psychiatrist. And by that time, when I wanted to be a psychiatrist, there was no evolutionary approaches to human behavior. There was ethology, who was an animal behavior approach. So I decided to go in that direction, and I went to California, and I got a PhD in animal behavior. So I did animal behavior work for some time. And that work means being in the field, observing animals all day long for many, many hours, hundreds, thousands of hours. And when you do that with few species, what happens, or what happened to me, is that you get worried about it. Because you see not just the behavior, but many other things that happen to a species that you really now understand and you want to protect. And that's why I moved slowly from animal behavior into conservation. I guess that conservation is very similar to being a medical doctor, but instead of just caring about one individual patient, you just care about ecosystems, you care about species. Perhaps it's less effective, you earn less money, but to me it was important to do that, to do that move. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I've been doing, because since I started to do conservation, I moved from species to large ecosystems. It's like that. You learn, you have to move, you cannot stay in the same place. Okay, let me go there. What I'm going to talk today is about the Patagonian Sea. The Patagonian Sea, just to provide you a general idea, is in the southern cone of South America. It's also called the Southwest Atlantic, but we don't like to call it like that. We prefer this new name of the Patagonian Sea because it concentrates on diversity of species more than on the, let's say, fisheries area. Southwest Atlantic is more a management name and a geographic name. I need the lights to be probably a little bit down. Okay, so here's the Patagonian Sea, here's Argentina, you have Uruguay, Chile, southern Brazil. This area, the Falkland Malvinas, which is a territory, it's a different territory now. It should not be considered part of Argentina. We Argentines do, but it does not have to be like that for the rest of the world. So that light, probably I may need, I don't care to have the light on me. Is there where I want, right, that's perfect. Thank you. So, you have to film. That's probably an issue. Is that okay? I forgot that you're filming. Well, can you have an idea here of what, okay. Yes. Otherwise, we're not paying attention to who is coming here in order to pay attention to who is not coming here. Anyway, this is South America, this is Argentina, and this is about the Patagonian Sea, around there. You can see it more clearly here. This is a very important place called Peninsular Valdes. Some of you might have heard about it. If you are going to Patagonia, that's the place you have to visit, Peninsular Valdes. All right, just to give you an idea of the area that we're looking at is about 2 million square kilometers. That's the size of the Mediterranean Sea. Argentina has an ocean. An ocean is about 1 million square kilometers, yet the country is not known to be an ocean country, a marine country. It's known to be a beef consumer, a beef exporter. By the way, it was a challenging decision to have beef. Today, an Argentine is being invited, and you invite with beef, which I be
very secure about our beef industry.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I was going to say. I mean, it is working fine. Thank you very much.
After the Argentine-Brazil game, which is being played up in New York.
Well, you know it's going. I know who's going to win. Come on. It's Argentina, by the way, just in case you think otherwise. I bet you. Okay? It's going to be tomorrow, actually. Okay.
That's the official position of the government.
All right, Argentina is well known because of that. Yet, that's the coastline of Argentina, too. It's a fabulous place for coastal wildlife and for marine wildlife. Those are, by the way, black-browed albatrosses. Most of the population of that species is in one island, one little island in the Malvinas. That little island is in the Malvinas. And WCS actually is running that place, owns that place, so that those animals, at least while they're on land, they're protected. Not only just beautiful seascape landscapes, but very special species we are talking about. That's a Magellanic penguin, one of the 4 species that you find in the Patagonian Sea. You know that penguins you only find in the southern hemisphere, but the Patagonian Sea has 4, and this is one of the most common species. The other important thing about the Patagonian Sea is that you don't only find important seascapes and species, but many of these species are colonial. They get together to reproduce. And those are the wildlife spectacles that you want to see when you're visiting a place. There is nothing like seeing one of these colonies. It's extraordinary. And other wildlife spectacles are about not just colonies, but about individual behavior. Like, for example, this killer whale, you might have seen this orca. They are Peninsular Valdes. They land like that, and they get these pups, southern sea lion pups, when they're about 1 month old. But in order to do that, they get out of the water with the waves, get a pup, and then move back quickly, otherwise they strand and they die. And this is taking place in a few places in the world, and the way it's being done there is being transmitted as a culture. Killer whales train killer whales to do that. It's not just the regular way killer whales capture their prey. So conservation is not just about species, it's about these spectacles also. The species is gone, the spectacle is gone. Darwin knew that the coast of Patagonia was important because when he went around the world, more than half of the time he spent there in Patagonia, in the area where we work, going back and forth. He spent most of the time actually on land. The beagle was in the water. And as a result, we know more about the terrestrial species of Patagonia at that time than the marine species. But he described quite a bit of them. He described some new species of dolphins, for example, that he called the Fitzroy dolphin. Magellan was there too. So it was Darwin, there was Magellan in Patagonia, and finally WCS arrived to the place. And we are lucky that the animals there actually are lucky that we are there, because these particular species, for example, the South American sea lion, I did my PhD on these species, and up to the 60s, these animals were just seen as source of blubber, source of leather. They were being killed because of the leather. About 500,000 of them were killed. Populations were very small in the late 60s and the 70s and the 80s when I started to observe these animals. But then, as I said, WCS started to do a lot of work in the area. We started in 64. I started in 83 to work in this area. We are a large group of people, 15, 20 people, some of them staff of WCS, some of them working in projects that WCS supports. WCS in Patagonia works in 3 areas: in the ocean, in the steppes of Patagonia, and in a place in Tierra del Fuego called Caruquinca. This is a wonderful, unique place that was donated by Goldman Sachs to WCS, and WCS is running this particular area. So WCS runs some important wildlife and wild places around the world. Not many, but some of them. Caruquinca is one of the last projects in Tierra del Fuego that WCS has. One of the first projects of WCS in Patagonia was about right whales. These are southern right whales. Northern right whales is similar, different species, same genus. There are only a few northern right whales. There are many more southern right whales. But when WCS started to do the work there in the late 60s, these animals were in very bad shape. They were threatened. They were coming back from extinction, basically, until Roger Payne started to work with them in Peninsular Valdes and published an article in National Geographic in 1976, together with another article published by William Conway, who has been CEO of WCS, who was CEO of WCS at the time and was CEO of WCS for 40 years or so. Both of them, Roger and Bill Conway, published articles in this particular issue of National Geographic, and the place was put in the map, was exploded in terms of attention. As a result of the work of Payne and Conway, a protected area was created in Gulf of San Jose, one of the most important places where these whales reproduce. And today, we are trying to get all these areas around Peninsular Valdes protected. So that's one of the things that WCS has done. The other thing that happened is that people around the world started to be interested in these whales. And from nobody watching them, today you have about 100,000 people that whale watch right whales in Peninsular Valdes. Right whales are saved. It's very unlikely that something is going to happen to these animals that could happen above our control, certainly. But if it's under our control, it's very unlikely that these animals are going to be killed. Certainly not now. They're coming back. They're doing quite well. We need a few more years to be sure that the animals are going to be protected forever. But work has been done. My work is not with right whales. I don't work with them, but I work with one of the species I work with is the elephant seals. What I'm doing there is I'm tagging. I'm putting a tag, a number, in the flippers, because we need to identify animals. And we do that hundreds. I do hundreds of these tagging per year, just to follow up individuals and know what they are doing and monitor their behavior and their populations. They are doing fine. We created a protected area around the Peninsular Valdes. All the places where these animals are reproducing on land are protected. But what do they do on land? They reproduce. That's a social behavior that I was observing. But reproduction takes place only during a couple of months per year. The rest of the time, these animals are at sea. When they are at sea, you cannot follow. For many years, we were unable to. But now we can, because we put some instruments, satellite tags, and you have to put them on the head, because these animals, when they are in the water, just show the head. And if the satellite tags are in any other parts of the body, the antenna gets underwater and does not transmit. You need a huge instrument in order to have the power to transmit from very little water. So you have to put the instruments on the head. It's fine. Instruments are like that. Then you recover them, or when they molt, they just lose the instrument. Because of that kind of studies that we do, we understand something like that. This particular animal, this is what she did in about 5 or 6 months. And I'm going to go quickly. Left from Peninsular Valdes and went immediately to the Falkland Malvinas. Big issue already in a jurisdictional problem. From the Falkland Malvinas, went around the Cape Horn into the Pacific, 2 ocean bases. Started in the Atlantic, went into the Pacific. In the Pacific was in the deep ocean of the Pacific. Here was on the continental shelf, very shallow. Deep ocean is there, shallow is there. Here is deep ocean, the Pacific. From there, went into the coast, to the fjords of Chile. Spent weeks foraging the fjords of Chile. And when it was time, went back, but instead of going around the Cape Horn, went back through the Magellan Strait. They knew it. They have been there for 1 million years. So they knew where the Magellan Strait was, much earlier than us. And then ended up into an important area here where you have a few elephant seals and back to the area of Peninsular Valdes. So this is one animal. What does this mean? This means something like that when you put it in perspective of jurisdictions. This is a human perspective of the ocean. What you have there is economic exclusive zones. The animal visited many of them. Visited some areas that are under jurisdictional problems. This area, Argentina, is actually claiming it from the UK, who is today dominating it. After a war, the animals couldn't care less about that. They went there, and then they went into international waters to the international waters of the Pacific, economic exclusive zone of Chile, and then back. And here are provincial waters. So many, many different jurisdictions, international jurisdiction, provincial jurisdiction, economic exclusive zone, a real challenge to try to protect these animals. Okay, that's one of the problems that we have in order to have an ecosystemic approach to this place. There has been a war. Those things have to be considered when you do conservation. This problem is still very alive. There are at least, I would say, 4 or 5 articles per day about this in the average Argentine newspaper. Search for each today, and I can guarantee you that you'll find several today. Search yesterday, you'll find several. It's a very, very important problem. The other important problems that these animals face is that when they are coming on land, sometimes they are coming like that. You see that they have like a cut, like an injury there, that is done by this rope. We knew that the origin of that were the fisheries. But what kind of fisheries? These kind of fisheries. That's a squid boat. And it's a picture that is taken at night because a lot of this fishery takes place at night. They turn on these lights, and that is complex, but attracts the squid in some ways, and they capture the squids, and they operate 24 hours per day, if it's possible. Here is where they operate. All this yellow is the area where squid boats operate. And as you could see, animals cross the areas where squid boats are operating. And they are using these kind of lures that sometimes get entangled and go into the water. And there is how the animals have their problems. That's a pollution issue. It's a garbage issue. The important thing about this fishery is that it operates at the level of the animals. It's the same dimension. Animals are distributed over millions of square kilometers in trips of thousands of miles. That's the same dimension that the fisheries operate. What you have here is a picture, satellite picture of the area at night. The limits, of course, were drawn, but the picture is showing the cities of Argentina. You don't have too many in Patagonia. It's not populated Patagonia. That's why it's all dark. But that's Buenos Aires. That's about 20 million people there in that particular area. Okay, these are the fisheries. This is just one night. And this is a picture. It's not a drawing. It's a picture. So, you know, they are operating along about 1,000 miles. And there are about, well, several hundred boats there. And they concentrate in some areas. But that's the dimension of the operation of these fisheries. It's not small, it's not artisanal. These are international fisheries. They are not necessarily Argentine fisheries. These are not necessarily fisheries that feed the poor. Most of the squid that is being produced is being exported, mostly to Spain, big consumer of these products. Fine, it's great. That's the way it looks at night from an airplane. This is the picture that you'll see. Each one of those dots is a boat. So we are dealing with a big issue here, and here's where the illegal, unreported, unregulated things are coming into the picture. Here's what you'll see. That's the coast of Argentina, Tierra del Fuego, the Magellan Strait, Peninsular Valdes, just to give you an idea. This is long. This is the size of several times California. I mean, we are watching a very large place here. Here are in 3 colors the distribution of the fisheries at these latitudes in 3 different years. Red, yellow, and blue are 3 different years. So we put together 3 different years, how they were distributed. And here in blue, you find a place that is particularly interesting to us. Why is that? Because that particular place is on the continental shelf, but is beyond the economic exclusive zone of Argentina. So these are international waters. So what happened is that the fisheries concentrate in that particular place that we call the blue hole, and they do not report what happens there. They just fish there because the squids go through this area, the entire area, and you know, some of them perhaps have permits from Argentina or from Falklands, Malvinas, but most of them don't. So these is fisheries that take place beyond the 200 miles, no reporting, no information, illegal fisheries. And they concentrate here. It's not that they are here by chance. They are there because they want to be illegal. There is something for them to gain. It's difficult to enforce this place. It's hundreds of kilometers from land. Very expensive to send boats there to just enforce the law. In addition, we need to really come up with some solutions that today are not easily available to manage this ocean as an ecosystem in order to solve these illegal fisheries. But that's an issue, that's a problem. Just to finish, the Patagonian Sea is not just important because of the fisheries. We have seen that it's important because of some of the wildlife that depends on that same ocean. Here is a particular species, is an albatross, that is important to us because it reproduces in New Zealand. There is where the reproductive colonies are. But when the reproduction is over, the animals cross the Pacific, spend a little bit of time along the coast of Chile, and round Cape Horn, they spend the rest of the year in the Patagonian Sea. So the Patagonian Sea is not just important for resident species, it's important for species coming from far away, for visitors. And this is one of the very interesting ones. After the animal has spent here a few months, goes around the world again to the reproductive areas in New Zealand. When we are dealing with ocean conservation, we have to understand that that is the dimension at which the wildlife that we want to protect operates. We need to be able to come up with conservation ideas, and conservation does not mean just don't do anything. It means also managing properly. We have to come out with conservation ideas that are in line, that are at the dimension of the large ocean ecosystems. It's not just that particular species, it's not just that little seal that I show you. By the way, all elephant seals do very similar things. Look at all the species that we know that are using the ocean in this way. Again, think that this is the Mediterranean Sea. This is huge. These are thousands of kilometers, and penguins do that. There are several species. Turtles do that. Fur seals, elephant seals, sea lions. The system is being used at the level of the millions of square kilometers. Animals are moving through thousands of miles at a time. So if we want to really protect them as a species, we have to protect them while they are on the coast. But we need to make sure that something else is going to be done, because when these animals are at sea, they are exposed. They are exposed to encounter fisheries that entangle them, that catch them as accidental catch, where they die, and that death is important. Most of the albatrosses are endangered because they are being caught at sea by fishing lines. So it's not minor. They could really have a strong impact on wildlife. What are the solutions? Well, many solutions. Management is possible, and fisheries don't want that to happen. I mean, we should read them well. They don't want animals to be caught in nets or in hooks. For many reasons, they don't want that. So they are really willing to try to solve those issues. That's one thing. We can work with them to do that. The other thing that we could do is, for some areas, when this is justified, we should set them aside as protected areas. We know where they are for the Patagonian Sea, but believe me, we know where they are for other temperate oceans too. By the way, this is a temperate ocean. This is not a coral reef area. It's not a tropical area. Temperate oceans are not considered properly in the conservation effort. We need to work more with temperate oceans. The U.S. is surrounded by temperate ocean. The California currents is creating a system that is very similar. All what I've been telling you today applies in some way to you here. It's not completely independent. As I said, we have to set aside some areas. We know where they are. I don't want to take more of your time. If you want to really pay attention, have a look at this webpage. And that's going to tell you where these important areas are for this particular place. But take-home message, we can protect the ocean. The ocean can be protected through large areas that require special management. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. We've got a couple minutes for questions, and I know I always tell people we have to be out here by 1:15, so we have about 3 minutes for questions. Any questions? Tim.
Those are satellite photographs of the lights from the fishing operations off the coast.
Yeah, NOAA takes it.
Looks massive. So under current trend, is there concern that essentially you will have exhausted that fishery within a certain, is there a forecast as to how long it will survive?
Well, there is, of course. Yes, it is unsustainable. That fishery goes up and down all the time. So the population of squid starts going down. For a few years, they are not doing great, and that allows them to go up again. It's a very special fishery. Squid die after 1 year. That species dies. So it can be caught after it reproduces. The problem there is many of the animals that are being caught are pre-reproductive animals. So I think, well, already that fishery is not catching as much as it used to. So already, that's already managing the fishery. But certainly it requires better consideration. Very difficult to do that because the UK manages it in a way and Argentina manages it in another way.
You can also just ask him general questions about Argentina.
Right, where to go, when? What's the best time of the year? Okay.
I think he's a paid consultant with the travel the tourism board there as well.
Yes, I get 10% for my project.
Has anybody ever been to this part of Argentina? Seen this? Okay, a few people.
Good.
It really is truly amazing. And
you've been in Peninsular Valdes? Hello. Okay, very close.
What I really liked about our friend's discussion is I get accused a lot of only talking about economics and security, and sometimes we forget about really how spiritual and how amazing some of these places are, right, and how we want to share them with our future generations. And I think that's always something we never really put up front from an ICCF perspective. We get wrapped up in human livelihoods and statistics and development and the right type of development. But that's something I think that we all should remember is looking at those pictures. I mean, it's a real special place on Earth, and as I thought it was well mentioned, that not all the parts of it need to have a special protection, but by protecting little pieces here and there, you can create a sustainable ecosystem that is many times that of California. So there are a lot of solutions that don't require just fencing off the place, but working with the fishermen, working with the NGOs, and of course the businesses.
Yes. Good.
One last question.
Hi, I'm wondering what kind of data collection do you think that you further need in order to get the kind of policy results that you're looking for, and maybe other policy alternatives that you're considering proposing either in Argentina or wanting to promote in the U.S.?
We've been there for a long time, so we are monitoring a few species. I've been monitoring elephant seals for 30 years. I have 30 years of information on the population size. That information is so valuable. We need to continue to monitor some of these species because those are indicators of what's going on at sea. We need to start new monitoring projects for species that are not indicating exactly what we are already studying. So monitoring work is for us extraordinary. It has an importance. Economists have indicators of everything. For conservationists, population sizes or distribution of animals are indicators. In terms of policy, the challenge that we have is some of these areas require to understand how to protect an international ocean, international waters. This is being done, but the tools are not readily available. People that are behind these ideas are developing them, but we are in the early processes of understanding how to protect international waters. And the international fisheries that will operate and are operating in the international waters are the last frontier in fishing. To protect international waters is very important. And then sometimes, just to improve a little bit the national law, for example, to be able to create a national park in the ocean. That's not a concept that was built in the original laws of national parks. You can do it. You can rethink it to create national parks in the ocean, but it requires some work, and we are doing some of that.
Thank you all. If anybody would like to stay behind to have more questions, obviously I'm sure we'll be able to at least answer them, engage with them. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful weekend, and enjoy the time off next week.